Aloha. If you are looking for thought provoking conversations and different perspectives than you'll find anywhere in the mainstream media on the topics and issues of the day, you're in the right place. I'm Tulsi Gabbard, former presidential candidate, United States Congresswoman, surfer, soldier in the Army Reserves, and veteran of 3 deployments. On my show, we go beyond the headlines and the sound bites. We cut through the noise to provide you with unique, nuanced perspectives on all sorts of issues, along with my unfiltered views. No partisan talking points here, no hidden agendas. This is the Tulsi Gabbard Show.
Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice on Cannabis Radio. I'm your host, Bethany Moore. I'm the Director of Communications at the National Cannabis Industry Association. Today I have 2 guests from our hemp team who joined us in Washington, D.C. for Lobby Days in September, James Granger and Chris Hope. James has built an extensive career focused on the blooming medical and recreational cannabis industry and holds a deep knowledge of cannabinoid effects, extraction and processing, cannabis chemistry, regulation, management, consulting, politics, operations, product development, and more. He's built an extensive career focused, in 2018, he joined the Clear, now the Clear Colorado Group team to rebuild and streamline operations. Now as Chief Political Officer of Clientele Capital, a Denver-based venture capital firm that provides funding and strategic consulting to growth-oriented companies in emerging markets. James spearheaded the company's goals of staying ahead of extensive regulatory changes, challenges, and nuances the company may face in the new developing cannabis industry. And Chris Hope has 20 years of experience in the cannabis industry. He founded Sequoia Wellness, a retail cannabis delivery service, in 2013, serving the Los Angeles area. In 2016, he founded Sequoia Management Group as a cannabis and hemp business development and consulting company. Today, the group focuses on the burgeoning industrial hemp industry, focusing on fiber, food, grain, seed, and building materials. He was a founding member and director of member and sponsor relations for Angeles Emeralds, a cannabis advocacy and lobbying group for Los Angeles County. He's been a member of NCIA since 2015, and in 2020 became the committee organizer for our hemp committee. Now he serves as the chair for the Hemp Committee and contributes to both the sustainability collaboration and the novel synthetic and minor cannabinoid collaboration. Both of these gentlemen are very involved in NCIA's thought leadership and committees, as you can see. So welcome. Thank you both for taking the time to join me on the show today.
Thank you very much, Beth.
Thank you.
Cool. So I know that was a lot of an introduction there, but let's learn a little bit more about you both, as far as also your background and things you may have done prior to getting involved in cannabis, and maybe how you got involved in cannabis as well. Chris, let's start with you.
Yes, I'm from Los Angeles, and like many of our listeners, I started experimenting with cannabis in middle school and high school, and soon found out if I bought a little bit extra in bulk, I could pay for my own. And from there, I was involved from the high school through my mid-20s. At that point in time, at the retail level, I went to school for a year in Humboldt County and got to see a lot of in California and got to see a lot of what was going on in the industry up there. I eventually got a degree in political science from UCLA, and later I got an MBA from Thunderbird, the American Graduate School of International Management out of Phoenix, Arizona, which is now part of ASU. So I have the business and the political side from both sides of it. And I did vote for Prop 215 in 1996 and in California that started the momentum of the medical marijuana field and eventually became the recreational field here. And I was I kept an eye on it, and I was looking at the industry, and something came up in 2013. At that time, I actually had been working in the green building business, and was working with a contractor, and we were doing energy upgrades for homes and buildings. And I was a little bit ahead of the curve, and wasn't making as much money. And I was hoping that the cannabis an opportunity came up with this retail cannabis delivery service, and I thought, okay, I will subsidize my green building dreams with the cannabis. And it just took off so much, and I just fell in love with the community, fell in love with everybody. When I got involved with NCIA in 2015, I really felt like these were my people. And I was I just kept on getting involved and showing up and going to the conferences. And I got involved with a cannabis advocacy group here in Los Angeles. And we still have issues with licensing, and I never got a license in the new modern regiment of laws. And so I've just been looking at different opportunities, and hemp was somewhere where I could land. And I've been working in Missouri, and now my two worlds are coming back together, because the green building and hemp is really starting to come together. And that's one of the projects that I'm working on right now.
Oh, that's great to hear. I am so excited about the future of using hemp in so many different ways. Thanks for sharing that. All right, James, tell me more about your background. I know you've been involved for a long time as well.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Bethany. Well, my history actually begins a little bit before college as well, where just like Chris, I found that little bit of extra purchase, would supply my own, and became very passionate about it in college. Actually, was more passionate about politics, funny enough, and went through college with the full intention of working for the State Department and giving back as a civilian to the government. And upon leaving, changed my mind at the very last second and said, I'm going to go challenge the status quo another way and do something non-toxic and that helps people, and moved out to California. And from there really jumped into the nitty-gritty around the large grows, and from California progressed the career into the medical side of things, where I really found purpose and drive with the ability for cannabis to heal. So took that as a sign to change my life around, and for the better, and really throw myself into this, and been doing that for the better part of about 15 years. And luckily have been, through all sides of the production side of the industry, loved creating things with my hands, loved the growing side, then loved extraction and processing, and then helped really love building that side of the industry. And strange enough, now the time's called for me to pick up my old college degree and move into the political side of the world, which I'm hoping to have an impact, a longer lasting impact, and really solidify the good that we've worked for, the whole industry has worked for up until this point.
Lovely. Thanks so much for sharing that as well. So one of the reasons I brought you both onto this podcast together was because of our activities out in Washington, D.C. recently in September. We finally came back in person for our 10th annual Cannabis Industry Lobby Days. And we had all these different teams of people, and one is the specialized hemp team. So your messaging to the congressional offices were a little bit different than most of the other groups focused on safe banking and the CAOA and so on. So the hemp team, the focus here was a little different, right? So tell me more about what you were focused on during your meetings, and also a little bit about the collaboration, because James, you were initially on a different team and you made a last minute decision the night before to hop over. So I want to hear that story. Actually, go ahead and jump into that, James, if you don't mind.
Sure. This definitely highlights the importance and significance of the NCIA events around Lobby Days. They're a really great rallying point for everybody to come together, discuss, and strategize. And at the opening mixer, I was distracted with some pinball and things, and ran into Chris. And Chris and I had been chatting in cross committee communication on hemp and minor and synthetic cannabinoids. And at that moment, we decided it would be a really great collaboration and a unified industry approach to join their team and go in and speak to some of these issues from the regulated cannabis side and also to learn from them as well. I really did pick up a lot of great knowledge from the hemp crew, but man, it was a last minute change. I'm sure with how busy you had the staff growing out there, that they were able to accommodate and change things up. It was really for the better and made a really significant impact, but it was a very last minute change, to put it mildly.
Yeah. So it makes sense, though. You're on our cannabis manufacturing committee. Chris is on the hemp committee. And there's a collaboration between those two committees, the novel, synthetic, and minor cannabinoid subcommittee, I believe. Chris, can you speak a little bit more to this?
Yeah, this is we have been, thank you so much for bringing this up, because this is I'm so passionate about this, and I learn so much every day. And so we, as a committee member and a committee head, we get together once a month, and all of us go for 30 seconds to 2 minutes and give an update about what we're doing. We go around the horn really quickly. There's 14 people, and Paul Coble from the manufacturing committee brought it up that he was putting together this novel, synthetic, and minor cannabinoid subcommittee. I was like, well, we need to be part of that. And so the hemp committee got involved, and along with the science advisory committee. So it's those three different committees, including the manufacturing committee. And I have to give a shout out to Maddie Grant from the government relations office of NCIA. She's done a great job interfacing with us. She's learned a lot. We've learned a lot how the process works. And so we've been talking, and we have actually a whole parallel set of podcasts, webinars, white papers that are going to be coming out this next year. We, with the hemp committee, have been focusing on the Farm Bill of 2023 and how that's going to play in and what kind of rules are going to change with this. And so Paul, James, me, Keith Butler, and a handful of other people, we have been working all together to push some policy and put it together. And I went to Maddie a while ago and I said, look, I'll do whatever you want to when we go to Washington, D.C. I'm a team player, but would you be interested in, could we put together a hemp team to talk about this issues? Because we're hearing about it all the time with Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 7, HHC, all these different cannabinoids that are coming out. And so it was a great opportunity. And I just, again, going to the social and James just going, I know you, and we've been working together, and we made a quick little change, and he came over to our team, and the rest of the 90 plus people were working on safe banking, which I really believe is great. But this is such a nuanced subject that it was really important for there to be a very specific team, and Maddie was able to put together some really great meetings for us. So we're very highly targeted with congressional offices.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Very, very inspiring to see this collaboration happening and on the fly too. Super awesome. And thanks for the heads up about all the white papers and blogs and podcasts. Thanks for keeping me busy. I appreciate it. All right, let's take our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and take a deeper dive with James and Chris. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice will return once we give a voice to our sponsors.
All right, we're back on NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice on Cannabis Radio. I'm your host, Bethany Moore, and my guests today are James Granger and Chris Hope. And we are talking about our trip to DC. We were lobbying for the cannabis industry, and as I mentioned, most of the attendees, 100 people, were talking to congressional offices about the Safe Banking Act, 280E, as well as the comprehensive reform like the CAOA. So the focus of the hemp team was a little bit different again. So again, you mentioned the Farm Bill and some of these minor and synthetic novel cannabinoids. Let's really dive into more about that. Chris, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, thank you so much. And when we got there, I was with Keith Butler, who is our chair emeritus, and Eric Carlson, who is a lawyer, and he works with John Murray, who is the vice chair of the Hemp Committee. John wasn't able to make it, but Eric was. So the team was Eric Carlson, Keith Butler, myself, Chris Hope, and James Granger. And we went in and we had 6 meetings. We met with people who, with staff from each congressional representative or senator sits on the ag committee on the respective chambers for the federal government. And so we were able to have high level conversations. For the most part, we weren't sure what we were getting ourselves into, how much information they had, and some knew more, some didn't. And so we went in with the purpose of just educating them on trying to understand how much they knew. And so we went.
Aloha. If you are looking for thought-provoking conversations and different perspectives than you'll find anywhere in the mainstream media on the topics and issues of the day, you're in the right place. I'm Tulsi Gabbard, former presidential candidate, United States Congresswoman, surfer, soldier in the Army Reserves, and veteran of 3 deployments. On my show, we go beyond the headlines and the sound bites. We cut through the noise to provide you with unique, nuanced perspectives on all sorts of issues, along with my unfiltered views. No partisan talking points here, no hidden agendas. This is the Tulsi Gabbard Show.
Around, and one of the things, this is just across the board with lobbying and doing lobby days, is as you go through the day, you kind of get to understand each other's strengths. And so we had a tag team, and I would open it up and just kind of introduce ourselves. And then I would pass it on to James, who would explain a lot about the science. Keith Butler would explain some of the nuances of some of the problems that are happening with the federal government. Because this is cannabis and it's still Schedule 1, the Food and Beverage Administration can't touch it, and there's a lot of nuances with it. So that's what we were focusing on. And I'm actually thinking that what I'll do right now is pass this on to James, and he'll talk a little bit about what some of the issues are that we're dealing with the science of it.
Awesome.
Sure, Chris. Well, as Chris was saying, it's really nice to find your team and work into a groove. Once we got the groove down, it was formulaic and also a lot of nuance and a lot of reading the room, which was fun. It's an interesting perspective to see where some groups or some offices are very, very 10,000 foot view on this, and some could quote back scientific formulation of it, which was fantastic. And between that, we found a way to speak to the issues and really understand the nuances of it while still promoting the cross collaboration. One of the bigger things on the science side of the cannabinoids is obviously everyone's heard of the D8s and the other minor cannabinoids that are working their way through the loopholes to reach audiences that shouldn't frankly have access at this point, underage, underregulated types of industry. So the first thing we would come and really say and empathize with them is, we don't want this in the hands of children. We're on your side. We want to make sure this is a safe industry. However, we also want to emphasize the potentials that these futures could have, and not only in terms of economic impacts, but potential medical impacts of minor cannabinoids, of their effects, and how new they are. And where we stand on it, and to show that the regulated industries and those that care about promoting the safety and the integrity of our industry are there with them to speak out against these bad actors. Having that rapport built with them, then we could really dive into the minutia of how the Farm Bill is affecting us. Again, like Chris said, how the FDA is dealing with this issue or not dealing with this issue. And speaking to them from a 2 sides of the coin type of situation, which I found to be one of the more interesting comments we had, was they said, this is one of the meetings we had, and paraphrasing here was, this is the first time we've had groups from both sides sitting together talking with us. And we went, the prohibitionists and the cannabis, they go, no, hemp and marijuana. And one of the big points we really were able to discuss with, especially the Senate Ag Committee, we were proud to kind of break the antiquated view of looking at the plant as either cannabis or hemp. When it comes to these minor in synthetic and novel cannabinoids, we really need to be looking at regulation of compounds. That was a real significant breakthrough that we felt, not to mention really put us on their radar for next year's review of the Farm Bill. And hopefully we get a few phone calls and can continue on with that.
Got it. Yeah, super interesting. And I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into some of those differences. You mentioned they were saying this is the first time the hemp side and the marijuana side, very similar plants, but very different as far as the industry goes. Let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into what those differences are and then what the similarities of goals are.
Sure.
Yeah. I wanted to, why don't I address this, James, for a minute? I was, one of the best meetings, again, I want to thank Maddie Grant so much. She was able to put a meeting together for us with the Senate Ag Committee. So this wasn't, these were 4 people, and we were in somebody in some office, conference room. We weren't in a senator or a congressional rep's office, in their lobby, in the cafeteria, which were some of the things that we had to encounter. They were ready for us, and there was 4 of them. And a lot of times when you're going out, and this is kind of to help people understand who you're going to see when you go and meet for lobby days, a lot of them are young staff. They're sometimes in their 20s, sometimes 30s. Sometimes you get some more senior people, but they are tasked to understand specific topics, and they want to impress their bosses, the senators, the congressmen, congresswomen, that this is the topic. They know it, and they know it well. So this is your shining moment. And this was, and I've done, this is my second lobby days, but when we walked in and there was 4 people there, we were really impressed, and including there was a lawyer there who, she must have been in her 60s or 70s, and she was seasoned. And she was with the Senate Ag Committee, and we would say things and she would stop, and then she would take a long moment and look at it. And one of the best moments was, she said, when we started talking a little bit about industrial hemp, she stopped and said, wait a minute, I think we didn't categorize this in enough categories when we put a line between hemp and cannabis or marijuana. And we said, absolutely, there's just so many different uses of it. And I think she walked away having more questions than answers. And I would bet anything that she did a deep Google dive, went down a rabbit hole that night about hemp and cannabis.
Wow. That's really, really exciting. James, what were your impressions about that and explaining the differences and similarities to these members of Congress?
Well, it was nice to see them coming in. A lot of these folks had come in with a really agricultural focused mind, which we of course need to speak to as an industrial hemp, voice as well, to bring up to them, hey, we're aware of these issues. We understand that this is being used in an intoxicating way, and we're on top of that, and we really want to address that head on. Really would loosen the mood. It would bring them to an understanding that we're all speaking the same language here, and we're all on the same side of protecting our market, protecting our public, and increasing awareness around this issue and not letting it just fall by the wayside. And that Senate Ag Committee meeting was absolutely amazing to see that kind of engagement, to see each specialist in that room and the special counsel, who was very seasoned and very understanding of the way things work, was able to speak rapid fire to these issues. It was more impactful than I could have even imagined for a lobbying approach. And I do sincerely hope that we can continue to engage these groups and help them guide policy around some of these more complex issues going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's take our last commercial break here, and we will wrap up our conversation with James and Chris. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice will return once we give a voice to our sponsors.
All right, we're back on NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice, and we've been chatting with James Granger and Chris Hope, who attended Lobby Days in Washington, D.C. with us recently to talk on hemp industry and minor and novel synthetic cannabinoids and some other topics that are a little bit departed from our main issues that we were advocating for, like safe banking. And to note what you were saying before the break, often these meetings are not with the actual member of Congress. Sometimes it is. Often they are, running around the hill doing something else. It's often with their staffers, which are typically in their 20s. So there's kind of this joke that Congress is really run by 25-year-old interns, right? But
Yeah.
but the agricultural committee, it sounds like you got really some intellectual investment from some more senior level people, which is super encouraging to hear as well. I'm just curious if there's any other experiences or memories that you had, whether it was your meetings on the Hill or any other experiences while you were in DC that you'd like to share.
Well, from a 10,000-foot view, one of the more salient things I felt was, honestly, I'd never been to DC before this, and really lobby and work more on the state level. One thing I'd suggest is really taking in DC how things work, how things move, being involved in the flow and the speed and the energy of that type of environment. One of the great things was very simply having lunch in the House cafeteria and seeing everything from a four-star general to Secret Service agents to the members of Congress sitting, eating together and chatting, and the energy that's involved with that. I really understand now how people can go out and live there despite the heat and the mosquitoes.
Those mosquitoes came after my ankles so bad.
Oh, it was bad.
It was brutal. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I thank you. I love this question because I like James I studied political science, international relations at UCLA and loved it. I love learning about how our government works, and instead of just complaining about it, learning how to work around it. I've worked on campaigns, I've worked on local campaigns, I've started advocacy and lobbying groups here locally in California, and and I've been involved in national campaigns as well. This was my second time to do lobby days, and it was just excuse me, it was just amazing to be part of it. And the first time I was like a kid in a candy store and like, okay, I'm here and what am I doing? This time it was so focused. So for anybody who's ever done their first one, go to your second one, because now you've been around the block and you're going to get to know a little bit about it. I'm also just so happy again that we were able to work with the government relations office and Maddie and help us put together these very specific meetings to talk about this subject. And there's something about it. It's almost like camp, because you go, when you were a kid in summer camp and you all get to meet each other and you're like, okay, well, what do you do? And who are you? And you're a little awkward. And by the end, you're, a couple days later, you're giving big hugs as we're doing our farewell party. And it is a delight that I was able to be there. When I wore a hemp hat while I was there, and I have pictures of me with the Capitol and James and Eric and the team behind us. And I've been sharing those with anybody I can, just because it's a pinnacle in my life that I'm able to do this. It's, I get to go in and I have a voice, and I'm not just one sitting on the sidelines. So that it's just been such a great experience, and I will go as long as I can. I will be there in lobby days for NCIA.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing those. Yeah, I spent the better part of my 20s in Washington, D.C. as well. And even though I don't want to move back there, I do really enjoy going back for lobby days. There's a lot of nostalgia and sentimentality for me about that city as well. So I can't wait to go back in May of 2023 as we are announcing our 11th annual Cannabis Industry Lobby Days, May 16th, 17th, and 18th. There are sponsorship opportunities available as well. I believe the Clear that with James is also going to be stepping up as a sponsor for this next Lobby Days in May. So register for Lobby Days. If you've been in the past, join us again. If it's your first time, hey, what better time than 2023 to join us for our 11th official year lobbying in Washington, D.C. So thank you both again for joining us. I loved hearing your stories. I'm so energized by hearing all of this as well. So thanks again. Appreciate your time. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Bethany.
Thank you, Bethany. Great time chatting.
Awesome. So thank also to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice. Until next time.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.
Peloton's best offer of the season is here. Get up to $300 off accessories when you purchase a Peloton bike, Bike Plus, or Tread. Choose from a variety of accessories like our cycling shoes, a heart rate monitor, non-slip grip dumbbells, and more. If you've been looking for a sign to join Peloton, this offer gives you everything you need to get going. This limited time offer ends November 28th. Visit onepeloton.com to learn more. All access membership separate. Offer starts November 14th and ends November 28th. Cannot be combined with other offers. See additional terms at onepeloton.com.
The Wendy's $3 breakfast deal is here. Get a bacon or sausage, egg, and Swiss croissant, plus a small seasoned potatoes. That's a better breakfast for just $3 in 3 easy steps. 1, wake up. 2, get out of bed. And 3, head to Wendy's for your $3 breakfast deal. Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's $3 breakfast deal.
Limited time only. Participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours. Select a request $3 breakfast deal in order to obtain discount. Not valid for a la carte or combos orders. Price and participation may vary in Alaska and Hawaii.